Big 12 tournament begins Wednesday, and as of early afternoon, there were no plans to alter the event schedule or play games in an empty Sprint Center because of coronavirus. But Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlsby did not rule out any possibility when he met with a small group of reporters on Tuesday afternoon. Hear the entire conversation with Bowlsby on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Wednesday, March 11th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Also, Missouri is off to Nashville, Tennessee for the SEC tournament, and the Tigers aren't playing on the first day. 10th seeded Mizzou opens on Thursday against number 7 seed Texas A&M. The Aggies swept Missouri during the regular season, but Mizzou won 5 of its final 9 games. Beat writer Souichi Terada previews the Tigers. But first, here's Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlsby. Bob, when did the virus come on your radar screen, and when did it become a conversation in the office?
It's been on our screen as it got more and more serious in the state of Washington. Most reports indicated that it was going to spread, and you didn't know where it was going to spread or when it was going to spread, but you were pretty sure it was going to spread. And then when Kansas City got its first case, that obviously raised our antenna. But we're still in a wait-and-see mode. I don't think we fully know what is going to happen with healthy people that don't have some underlying condition and that contract the disease, we haven't been told that we shouldn't play the tournament, and we haven't been told that we shouldn't play it in front of an assembled crowd. If we are told those things, obviously we're going to yield to the best medical advice that we can get. We want to keep our players and coaches and staff members and fans as healthy as possible.
There's so much data, or not enough data, both all at once, right, to digest. But I mean, when you see things like the Ivy League making its decision, what point of contact is that for you?
Well, we collaborate with the other commissioners. The Ivy group is a little bit different because it's a 4-team played on campus. It's not a one-site deal, and so it's a little different than the other ones. I think there may be a little more infection on the East Coast than there is around here right now, but it's going to spread across our country, that based upon what everybody says, and yet we don't know when and we don't know how. And as I say, we're the emergency response team at KU Med has been very helpful and been in constant contact with our staff, and we continue to work with the city and with the CDC and with others that can advise us on the medical aspects of it. And we don't want to put anybody at risk, and so we'll just keep checking in 2 or 3 times a day and responding to what we're told.
I guess we heard today that the league's going to limit locker room access for the men and the women.
Yeah, I think when the professional sports did that, and some other conferences have done it, as I said earlier, we collaborate a fair amount with the other conferences, and I think that's going to be a fairly consistent policy throughout the A5 for sure, and I guess through the other conferences as well. And so, we don't take that step capriciously, but when armed with the information that less contact is better than more contact, we probably have to respond.
Is it possible there may be more precautions like that taken during the course of the tournament?
Well, we're doing full cleans on all the facilities. We have lots of sanitizer dispensers in and around the venues. We're encouraging people that have pre-existing conditions to consider staying out of crowds, and I'm answering these questions as a layman. We rely on the advice of medical professionals, and I think that we're applying best practice when it comes to ensuring that the venues are safe and that the interactions are safe. But it's a constantly evolving environment.
Bob, how much do you have to take into account sort of in between potential measures as you weigh out scenarios? I mean, it's
a really good question, and I think So far, of course, we've done the work with the locker rooms. I think we're going to keep the student athletes sequestered from the crowd for the most part. They'll be in a seating area by themselves, and so I think there are some little things like that we can do. But I think the next real decision threshold is going to be, do you play in front of fans, and do you assemble 15, 16, 17,000 people in a enclosed area? And I understand that the NBA owners are going to be meeting today or tomorrow, and some of what we do will be informed by that. I'm sure we want to draw upon all the best information we can get, but I wouldn't say that our situation is just exactly like theirs, but we certainly want to learn from what other people are doing.
Have you contemplated just the
Sorry. You've become more popular in just a couple of minutes.
Just contemplating.
Can I hold anything else for you guys?
Contemplating the idea of it could theoretically could happen, right? I guess it's not it's a long shot, but the idea of playing in an empty arena, have you been around that ever for any? I know it's the Division III guys.
Actually, Tim Weiser, who's our deputy commissioner, he played a game at Eastern Michigan one time without a crowd, and I think he would characterize it as being pretty weird. But having said that, there are some components of the competition that bear on the postseason, and so if we play the tournament, our tournament champion, as an example, has to be declared the conference champion. So there are some implications if we have something happen in advance of the tournament starting. We have some implications if it happens midstream, all the way to the end. And I don't think there's any way to forecast around that. I think you just have to keep checking in and keep relying on the best medical advice you can get. And I think most medical professionals will tell you this is new ground for them too. This is a voyage of discovery. They can compare it to other diseases and to other viruses, but they don't all act the same at the same phase of their evolution. So I don't know that. That's part of the difficulty of this, is there are not definitive answers. It's very much a make decisions as you go situation.
And make decisions as you go with changing, sands under your feet. It feels like things shift and look different every 4, 8, 12 hours in some ways.
Yeah, it's not very comfortable, but I guess it's the best we can do at this point. We have to rely on the best advice and the best surveillance information we can get, and try and do the right things.
The men's events in advance sell out. Have you heard, at least anecdotally, that there about tickets and?
Haven't heard anything, but I was on an airplane over the weekend, and it was about half full on a flight that I've known to fly full all the time. And so I think it wouldn't be entirely surprising if we had some people that might consider themselves in the range of higher risk that would stay home. Yeah, I think it's conceivable.
Excuse me if you've already answered this. You talked about the NBA kind of looking at the way they're playing the games. Can you go over that and maybe talk a little bit more about the press release that was just put out, where it seems like the media won't even be allowed to touch the court?
Yeah, well, the media is generally kept away from the court, with the exception of ESPN and our TV partners. In the case of the women, the Fox. So that part's not particularly unusual, but if we find that we're going to do it without crowds in the building, we'll also have to decide if we're going to have media in the building, and if so, how many, and where are they going to be, and how will they operate, and all of those kinds of things. So it's just another component of this that's really not able to be forecast in any sort of precise way.
Does it make it easier in this circumstance having both tournaments in the same city?
Yeah, ironically it does. And as you know, it's the first time we've had both of them together in about 10 years. So it would be much more complicated to have us in two different sites. So that part of it's a blessing.
As As you talk to those medical professionals and they're advising you on what to do, have they said hypothetically what may have to happen in order to pull the crowds?
No, they haven't done any forecasting along those lines. They're just trying to evaluate at every opportunity and then conveying that to us as they, so far we've been in a relative steady state, but that could change any time.
And is it like the CDC and state health department that you're looking at?
KU Med is our hospital partner for and with them being our closest university, that makes perfect sense. So they've been very responsive, and the city and CDC and public health officials, they've all been very responsive. And obviously they have concerns beyond the Big 12 basketball tournament. They have a lot of things going on that they have to be concerned about.
Bob, with all that, how much? Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
This is a non-virus question.
Bless you.
You sneeze?
KU last week came out with its public, offered its documents in public with the NCAA. Given the fact that they're the apparent overall number one seed, from the conference standpoint, is it a tarnishment in any way that the team that's going to be the number one overall seed is under investigation as it enters the NCAA tournament?
I think they would prefer to not have had allegations made, and we would as well. But I have great faith in Chancellor Terada and in Jeff Long and in the basketball folks, and they'll work their way through it. The announcement last week is kind of pro forma because they have 90 days to respond, and that's what that release was. So I don't make much of that, except that they had a responsibility to respond, and they did so. And so it's a process we're going to have to work our way through.
I was just going to ask you if you've been back in your role as chair of the NCAA tournament committee right now, how much more your state of mind would be, worried or whatever the word would be. But
actually, I was on the NCAA tournament committee when we were contemplating the invasion of Iraq. And it was coming, you might recall, as I think back, I think it was the 18th of March or something like that. It was right during the middle of it, and there was a lot of talk quietly about whether we would play the tournament. And what we heard back from DOD and from others was that the NCAA tournament is a huge part of our American culture, and that they would like us to play the tournament and have it be as normal as possible. And so that was the planning process we went through. So this one's a little different from that, but there have been past potential disruptions, and I think they're probably in about the same shape we're in. They're gonna try and get the best advice they can and move ahead step by step.
But it's interesting, the bigger question about what this all means to us, and just for lack of a better term, morale of the country to go on with the event like this. I mean, you want to have these things.
Well, and if you're going to be quarantined, you'd really like to have something to watch.
Yes, you would. Yes, you would.
Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of KansasCity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
Souichi, how you doing?
Not too bad. Got some hot chicken in Nashville, so it could be worse.
Absolutely could be worse. I love Nashville. Great town. You are there for the SEC tournament, which begins today, Wednesday, but you won't be covering a game. No, we're not, at least not a Missouri game, and that hasn't happened too often in the recent history of the SEC tournament. The Tigers played their way out of the Wednesday game, becoming the 10th seed, which means they open on Thursday, 6 p.m. against Texas A&M. I've got a story called up on the Kansas City Star's website, kansascity.com. The headline says, "How far can Mizzou basketball go in the SEC tournament?" by Souichi Terada. So you attempt to answer that question here, Souichi. I know the Tigers were 10th seed. It would the odds are against them from having too much success in the postseason. They entered the tournament with a 15-16 overall record, so we're not talking about an NCAA tournament hopeful here. They'd have to win the tournament to be in the NCAA, but it is a Tigers team playing better over the last few weeks of the season than it did when SEC play opened. So what do you think the sense is going into postseason for Mizzou? How confident is this team?
Yeah, and it's funny, right? The number 10 seed, they kind of, I don't want to say they lucked into it or backed into it because they did have to win a game, but Mizzou needed like 4 things to happen. And I tweeted about this, and when you needed all of those things to happen and it did, that's not too bad of a start, to making an improbable run in the SEC tournament. But yeah, I mean, they played Texas A&M, a team they lost twice to, their 0-2 against, and I think the biggest thing is that both of those games really came in the early and middle portions of the SEC when Mizzou was starting 2-7 in conference play, and you mentioned this as well, was just the confidence of the team. I really think they've kind of found an identity, whether it was Xavier Pinson or Drew Smith leading this offense, or Reed Nico becoming, taking that next step from role player to serviceable starter, and all these other things. And then on top of all of that, Conzo Martin and his team brings back Jeremiah Tillman and Mark Smith, and it really seems like both of them are kind of getting their legs under them. Tillman's played 20-plus minutes the last 2 games. Mark Smith, he has 3 straight threes at the end of the game against Alabama. Yeah, sure. Those 3-pointers were in the last few minutes of garbage time and a blowout win for Mizzou, but seeing the ball go through the net for an injured player, I think really will help Mark, going into the tournament. So there's all these little things, whether it's the good play, your returning players, or players finding their identity that make you think, hey, Mizzou might be a tough out in the SEC tournament, and you play an Aggies team that Buzz Williams has done a great job, but are very beatable. Then you play number 2 Auburn if you win that, and Mizzou has already beat Auburn this year. So things are kind of starting to shake up kind of interesting if Mizzou is going to make it to the weekend of the SEC tournament for the first time since they got into the conference.
Right. You mentioned that the first half of the season they went 2-7, Missouri did, and that the final game of that first half of the season was a big loss down at Texas A&M, and that meant they had completed the season series with the Aggies. Texas A&M was one of the teams that they played twice this year. Since then, 5-4 to finish out the SEC play for Mizzou, and wins over Auburn, as you mentioned, and Arkansas, which could be NCAA bound. It is a different team, and in that A&M game that Missouri lost to end the first half of the season, Xavier Pinson played. I think he started that game, and Tillman played in that game, but it was a blowout, and I think it was, Missouri was trying to reestablish its identity at that time, and I believe that did happen over, as we said, the final half of the season. What about this matchup in particular with A&M? The A&M is a grinded out kind of team. They don't they don't. There's some teams in the SEC that like to get up and down. A&M, not one of them. They are defensive minded, possession minded. Is this a decent matchup for Missouri?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the first 2 games, I mean, the one factor you look at for Texas A&M is Josh Nebo, and a very athletic forward, very talented forward. And he really carved up Mizzou. I mean, he scored 18 and 14 points in those 2 games. And really, I really attribute that to not having a very healthy Jeremiah Tillman. And I mean, yeah, sure, Tillman played in that second game. He played 12 minutes. He was coming back from injury. He hadn't played in a month. He isn't or wasn't the player now. Just because he got a few games under his belt, he looks a lot more comfortable. And really the biggest thing that I point at, and the second game especially, I mean, when players coming out of the locker room saying they got out-toughed, especially on the rebounding glass, for a Conzo Martin team, I mean, that shouldn't be happening. That's not what Conzo, that's not really his philosophy or kind of the foundation he sets for his team. So really, I look at that rebounding battle, and that's a big thing game to game, but especially against Texas A&M. I mean, when you're a slow, grinded out team like Texas A&M is, every possession matters, and second chance opportunities matters. So if Mizzou is going to just absolutely get destroyed on the glass, on the rebounding battle, then it's going to be another long game for the Tigers. But luckily they have picked it up there, and as you mentioned, like Pinson is playing so much better, and that was one of the first few games he played against the Aggies when he was in the starting role, just because Mark Smith went down, and there was kind of an adjustment period. But I think Mizzou has smoothed it out since then.
Yeah, you mentioned Josh Nebo for A&M. Look, I like what Reed Nico has done for Missouri this year. He's had a really nice senior season and deserved all the plaudits that he received on senior day and everything. But there is a difference with him and Tillman when it comes to guarding an athletic big man like Josh Nebo. And I think that works in Missouri's favor, assuming Tillman stays out of foul trouble and is able to play the way he's capable of playing. I just think that's an advantage for Mizzou in this game. And do I have the bracket right? The winner gets Auburn, a team that the Tigers have already defeated this year.
Yeah, so the bracket shapes up very well for them, just because you have prior success against the number 2 seed who helped you get that tiebreaker over Arkansas as well. So Mizzou is very grateful for that Auburn win. Yeah, and if Tigers do end up beating A&M, they would go from a grinded out type of game to playing an Auburn team that likes to get up and down the floor, and in that Tigers victory over Auburn at Mizzou Arena recently, I believe that was a game where Missouri shot it exceptionally well from three, where they're like 7 for 13, and Auburn was just atrocious from behind the arc. As I try to imagine a way that Missouri can have some success in Nashville, getting past A&M, and then having to beat an Auburn team that'll probably be motivated. We know they'll be a little more healthy, and you can't expect Auburn to shoot as poorly as it did at Columbia recently. Can you build a scenario where Missouri finds a way to beat Auburn? Yeah, I mean, just because there is prior success, Auburn obviously shot the ball very poorly that game. And another thing too is that Isaac Okoro is back. I mean, that's one of your best players if you're Auburn. And obviously that, I believe when Mizzou played Auburn, that was one of their first games, or the first game without Okoro. So just like Mizzou, I'm sure there was kind of an injury adjustment for Auburn, which I'm sure helped Missouri in that game. But yeah, I mean, I think the big thing too, and you mentioned the up and down plan. I mean, that Alabama game Mizzou played for the regular season finale. I mean, Alabama's a team that likes to get it up and down, but they scored a season low 50 points, and that was a season low by 19 points. I want to say 19, 20 points. I mean, if Mizzou plays defense like Conzo Martin knows and thinks they can, none of this matters, because then Mizzou is, then you're limiting possessions, just the sample size is smaller. Then you're looking at a Mizzou team that can really make a run. And if you're going to beat a team like Texas A&M and Auburn in back-to-back days, and then whatever happens after that, NIT, NCAA hopes, if you play defense, then things will kind of trickle down onto offense, just as Conzo Martin wants it. So that's one area I'm looking at, just because if Mizzou plays defense like it did against Alabama in the regular season finale, then we're talking about a completely different team, just because of what it can do on offense now, as we've seen with Pinson and Drew Smith and that supporting cast.
Big ask to win 4 games in 4 days. It doesn't happen often in conference tournaments, certainly in major conference tournaments. I remember there was one year the Kemba Walker UConn team won 5 in 5 days to win the Big East and went on to win the national championship. But it's just so difficult to accomplish. But I'll tell you what, if Missouri can just get by A&M and get to Friday, that will have been an accomplishment for this program that has that just hasn't had much success in the SEC tournament in its league history. So Kentucky's the top seed, Auburn is the 2, LSU the 3, and Mississippi State is the 4 seed. Do you see the champion coming out of that group?
Yeah, and I've actually been telling people I think Mississippi State comes out with it. I mean, when you have a Reggie Perry and just their front court, especially in college hoops, I really think they're going to come out on top just because of the talent they have, and they're kind of dangerous. I mean, they started 0-3 in conference play. They won 11 of 15 SEC games, so I think there's a lot there to like from Mississippi State.
Well, that would mean they would have beaten Kentucky, or will have won a semifinal game over perhaps Kentucky to get to the championship game on Sunday. Okay, Souichi, let's wrap it up with this. Is there any path to the postseason for Mizzou other than winning the SEC tournament?
Yeah, I think if Mizzou gets to the final on Sunday, which we have never seen, so the odds are very against them. But if you get to the final, you get to the final and lose, you finish a game above 500. That'll probably get you into the NIT. Mizzou had a small 2-game losing streak just before the regular season finale, and I think Mizzou had to win at least one of those for a conceivable chance at the NIT. Now you're looking at least a 3-1 weekend. And another thing too is just that the SEC is so weak this year, and the NIT is only going to take so many teams from the same conference, especially in a 32-team field. So that kind of makes it difficult. And then as we've mentioned, if you win the whole thing, then you're in the NCAA tournament. So I think those are the 2 best paths, which are both very unlikely. So it's looking like an uphill battle for Mizzou.
It is. Okay. Well, and it starts on Thursday with the 6 p.m. game against Texas A&M. Souichi Terada will be there covering it for the Star. Souichi, good talking to you, and safe travel.
Appreciate it, Blair.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to producers Savannah Smith, Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Also thanks to Souichi Terada for weighing in on Mizzou. We'll be back on Thursday with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.